So, a guy was able to finally find himself a video card. Score. Very excited. Prices are a little not good right now. Too expensive, and getting a video card for a decent price, yeah, not gonna happen too good. You got RX 570s going on the eBay for like $300, $400 when we used to buy these cards for about $60, $80 on a good day. But we were able to find something, and it's not the newest, it's not the greatest, and well, it's not even a gaming graphics card, but it's something. So let's open it up. We were able to get ourselves a Quadro, and these things are actually selling pretty cheap because, well, they're not gaming graphics cards and really can't be used for mining all that much, but they could get your feet wet and tickle your fancy a little bit, and I think it's enough to kind of get the job done. So let's talk about this. This is the Nvidia Quadro K2000. This one was launched in March of 2013. 28 nanometer processor. Is based on that GK107 graphics processor, and it does support DirectX 12. Yeah, pretty cool. It does not require any additional power, which is nice. Just pop it in. Once you pop it in, you're good to go. You can work these in these old Dell Lenovo's, and they'll get the job done. Maximum power rated wattage thingamabobber is 51 watts. You got your displays and your DVI. It's 202 millimeters long and 111 millimeters wide. So that's your size. Features a single slot cooling solution, and when it came out, it was priced at $599 US, and back in 2013. So do the math equations, divided by 2, upgrade, price slashing, comes out to $672 for the 2021 price. Has 2 gigs of DDR5, and DDR5 is the way to go. I mean, now they got DDR6, but 4 gigs would be more ideal, but all we can get is 2 gigs. Now, I paid $30 for this card, and I wish, so little backstory, looking at these cards and deciding to give them a shot, about a couple of weeks ago, the K4200 variant of this card was going for like 50, 60 bucks, and I should have bought a couple of them because they're the 4 gigs variant. So even though these are not gaming cards, the more memory bandwidth would kind of help it out a little bit. And now them jokers are going for $100. Great. So we got this one for 30 bucks, and maybe I might spend an extra dollar or two and get that 4 gigabyte. But for flipping computers, at least like I said, this will tickle your fancy and get your feet wet. So let's take this thing apart. Let's look at it like we always do. Check the old thermal paste, make sure it's not and dried up, and then we'll pop it in and we'll see if she can give us a little game action. Alright, so previously I've done videos, and I did one of the videos when talking about what you should do when you buy a used graphics card and all that stuff, and I always say that the first thing you should always do is pop it in the computer and make sure it works. I went ahead and did what I was supposed to do and just decided not to do that and just take it apart. So when you get one of these used graphics cards, pop them in the computer, make sure they work, at least power on a little bit. That way, if you have to return it, they can't argue that you opened it up, messed it up yourself, manipulated it, all that good stuff. So that's always my good advice. Then once you make sure she's working all good and pretty, you could go ahead, pop her in, take her apart, upgrade your thermal paste a little bit for some awesome performance, and then you'll be good to go. But I didn't do it that way, so that's fine. Alright. It's very easy, 5 screws. It's a very small graphics card, and trying to zoom you guys in there a little bit. Focus, focus. Alright, you got your memory chips over here, Nvidia, and this cooling. Like I said, this thing was not designed for gaming, so this cooling solution is just enough to keep her a little warm, and you know, that's about it, and all that good jazz. So yeah. Alright, so let's go ahead, let's get some paper towels, wipe all this stuff, clean it up, and then we should be able to fire her up. Alright, so our Quadro K2000, where does it mark? Where does it stand? But these Quadros, they're actually pretty cheap. Like I said, I paid $30 for this one. The K2000, the K4200 is going for $100. I'm sure you can find it for about $80. And they ain't that bad, considering that if you're trying to get your feet wet, if you're trying to build your computer and you just need a graphics card just to get you started, this is something to consider, especially for the budget guys that are like building the Optiplex, Lenovo's, and HPs. This will actually fit in there and tickle your fancy, to say the least. So we tested 3 games: Far Cry 5, Fortnite of course, and Shadow of the Tomb Raider. I just like using those games because of the more common games that people are playing when they're asking me to build them computers. And one thing I did find out was that with Fortnite, we were actually able to play at 1080p low settings and able to average about 55 to 56 frames per second. And of course, if you bring it down to 720p, you could probably up the graphics to about medium to high and probably get the same effects of it, if not just trying to get higher frames per second, just depending on your game. I typically like to use these graphics cards for those that are just trying to play some of those battle royale multiplayer games, and they're not too worried about the intense graphics or how they look, but just more about getting their feet wet and just getting some decent frames per second. Shadow of the Tomb Raider, that one was a little rough on this one. On the Shadow of the Tomb Raider, we were averaging 15 frames per second at 1080p, and then at 720p we're averaging 15 frames per second, and then when we brought it down to 1024 resolution, 18 frames per second. Playable to say the least, but not ideal, just enough to get your feet wet. And Far Cry 5, 1080p low, 27 frames per second, 720p average was 30 frames per second. So yeah. Now with the overclocks, we were able to boost the core up to 200 and the memory clocks up to 250. Temperature stayed pretty well, and actually this fan ain't too loud compared to some other graphics cards that I use with that. I find that with the overclocks, all it really does is stabilize and just kind of get your frames per second more consistent. So if you're like struggling to get 30 frames per second, doing a decent overclock on it will actually get you more stable at 30 frames per second, if not slightly higher. I mean, you're not going to boost this thing to the next tier graphics card, but it might make your gaming experience a little more bearable until you're able to get something better for it. Quadros, not too bad. Might be something to consider if you're just trying to get your computer up and running or you need a spare graphics card. I like it. I'll probably use it in a low budget potato build for somebody just wanting to get started and all that good mess. So definitely comment down below. Let me know what you think. Quadro K2000, worth it? Not worth it? Something to consider. I think the price kind of speaks for itself. If you liked the video, definitely hit the like button, subscribe if you're not, and as always, we'll see what we come up with next.